everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Katie Weldon, and I am the Programming Director with the Mississippi Gulf Coast Chamber of Commerce. And I want to welcome you to Ask the Expert, Your Business in Bookkeeping, with our guest speaker today, Ms. Hope Blankenship from To the Rescue Bookkeeping. Thank you so much, Hope, for being here. And just to go over what the Chamber is, the goal and mission of the Chamber is to connect, inform, advocate, and develop. And we're doing that through these virtual events. You know, everybody's atmosphere is changing a little bit, and we're trying to adapt with that as well. So a couple of events that we have coming up. Tomorrow is our Chamber after 4. You know, we usually have our Chamber after 5, so we're switching it up. Maybe people are getting off a little bit earlier, but join us for that tomorrow. All of those links can be found on our Facebook page. And then next Tuesday, we'll be having another Ask the Expert, Your HR Questions Answered. And that's with Brooke Robbins from Harris Gulf Coast. And she's going to go over HR work, your employees' health and safety, working remotely, and a ton of other things. And that will be sent out this afternoon. So be on the lookout for those events as well. And now I'd like to introduce Ms. Hope. So Hope opened her own bookkeeping and accounting firm in 2007. And since then, the company has grown to over 10 employees in 6 different states. To the Rescue Bookkeeping has advocated for the employment of military spouses, providing them with professional training and a career that is transportable to accommodate the many moves associated with military families. She graduated from Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program in December of 2014. And in February of 2017, she was chosen as one of the state of Mississippi's 50 top leading business women. And with that, Hope, I turn it over to you.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining today. Thanks to the Chamber for always being able to pivot in a crisis and just allowing us to all get together online, and just all the work that you guys are still doing, even though we can't all be together in normal networking environments. So the past couple weeks has been crazy, to say the least, I think, for just America in general, but also for small businesses for sure. So I wanted to just let you guys know, we've been working with small businesses just on their PPP loans and all the new things that are coming out. I've been in multiple webinars, calls a day, just kind of trying to keep up to date on the regulations and all those things. Everything in this PowerPoint is updated through last night at about, I think 4:30 is when Congress passed the third round of the COVID stuff, financial stuff. So I tried to get everything up to date, but it's ever changing daily. So if you're watching this later on the recording or whatever, things can have been updated. So we'll get into it. I have a lot of information. I'm on the finance and accounting side, which never is super fun to talk about for most people unless you enjoy it like we do at To the Rescue. But I really just wanted to get some basic information out to you guys as business owners on just kind of what do these loans look like and what's the next step for you and your business. So what we'll cover today is I've got some small business stats just to talk about. I've got a quick review of the PPP for those that have applied or those that have not applied yet and are wanting to. I've got some other options for small business help that's available that you may not have heard about, or you may have heard about but don't know much about. And then I was going to kind of talk about challenges that employers are going to face as they're getting ready to go back to work. We've got a few of those that are kind of roaming around different articles online and things like that nature. And then kind of next steps you need to think about when you open or when you get your PPP funding or anything kind of regarding your financial data for your business. And then we'll open it up for questions at the end. And Katie, you said they can submit questions on the chat.
Yes, if you hover over your screen, you'll see a question and answer box. Click that and you can ask questions throughout the presentation. These questions will be viewable to our entire audience as well. So be aware of that as you're typing in your questions. And at the very end, I will read your questions aloud and Hope will answer them to the best of her ability. And she's super knowledgeable, so I have no doubt that she will knock it out of the park.
All right, awesome. So just to kind of get started, I wanted to cover, not that I don't think anyone already knows these facts, but just an intro here on small business facts. So a small business by SBA terms is a firm with 500 or fewer employees. There are 30.7 million small businesses in the US. That's insane to me. And over 90% of the business population in America are small businesses. So I think our leadership in government recently has acknowledged that there's a lot of small businesses and that we account for 64% of new jobs in America, which I think is pretty incredible. Good stats, but small businesses are important. So keeping them open and or running and people employed, you got to help us, the small businesses, to keep kind of America rolling that way. Going into PPP. So if you haven't heard of this, this is the Paycheck Protection Plan. As a small business owner, I am sure you've received umpteen emails about it and things of that nature. But basically, this came about to help keep people employed. So what this is a loan program available to small businesses, generally with fewer than 500 employees. There's some exceptions. It's also available to sole props, independent contractors, self-employed, and nonprofits. So where things generally don't allow people without payroll to apply, they've waived that in this case, and so the PPP is available to those people as well. You can get a loan equal to 2.5 times your payroll or your Schedule C income or whatever. We'll kind of go into that in a little bit. If you use the loan proceeds to pay for payroll and some operational expenses, you can have the loan forgiven. So this is pretty incredible. It's free money, hate to say that, but for small businesses to keep your employees employed and paying, you can have this entire loan forgiven. So the status of funding is it was all used up within 2 weeks. Last Thursday evening, I think, is when they hit the mark. And Congress, as of yesterday at 4:30, has passed and agreed on the bill that the House is voting on it tomorrow, on Thursday. So it's supposed to pass, where everybody kind of in the industry is anticipating that to happen. But everything's put on hold right now, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be getting ready to apply if you have not already. So $300 billion for just this program is part of that bill. And I said they were processing Thursday or Friday, but House still has to pass that, and then the president will sign it pretty quickly. So maybe Friday, but it may be early next week. The process kind of looks like you go to your bank. So this is not through SBA.gov or anything. You go through your lender. They take your application and they put it into the SBA system. They get SBA approval. You get a loan origination number, and then your money's kind of dispersed. So it should not be longer than 10 days after approval by the bank. That was held up a little bit in the very beginning, but now it seems like they're kind of catching their stride and getting within that 10-day window. Things to remember is your 8-week time frame for forgiveness begins the date you get funded to your account. So not the date you applied, but when you get the money, that's when your 8-week time frame starts. So those are kind of some overview things. What you need to have ready to complete your loan package. So if you have not already applied, most banks and other funding places online are still accepting applications. So you want to get those in as soon as possible, because they're basically queuing them in the system in line for when when the SBA opens the application process. So the line's already, accruing. So the sooner you get the application into your lender, the sooner that they're going to be able to process that once it opens back up. So now is a great time to get all this stuff together and get it to your lender. So what you need is the Paycheck Program application. You can get that online. Most often, if you're working with your lender, they have a whole email they'll send you with a lot of the things that they're wanting. And to tell you the truth, every bank is wanting some different things and different formats of things. So if you already have the relationship with your bank, contact your banker if you haven't already and get what their requirements are and what their forms are, because each bank is a little different. We've worked with, I think, 12 banks at this point, and no bank has been the same in information that they've wanted. So just check with your specific bank. That's where that spreadsheet from your specific bank comes in, and generally it's just a spreadsheet to tell that calculates how much your payroll was for the period of time that they're asking, divided by 12 times 2.5, which gets you your loan amount. So it's a very simple spreadsheet that you should be able to fill out. Small businesses with payroll. If you have payroll, you're going to have to provide proof that you were in business as of February 15th. That's kind of the cutoff. If you're a brand new business and you weren't open or operating by then, you probably won't qualify. My thinking is you need your Secretary of State filing, a business license. You can also use a business bank statement. They're allowing those as well. So that's kind of what you would need there. And then your 2019 payroll reports, so 941s, 940s, W-2s, and your 2020 quarter one reports. So if you haven't filed your quarterlies yet, because they're due next week, you can just do a payroll summary or request that from your payroll company. These reports do include company paid benefits. So what's covered is all wages paid, company paid benefits, so 401k, health insurance, things like that. All of that stuff is covered in this and used to calculate your loan amount. You can only calculate on 100K in wages per employee. So if you have employees that are in that top higher bracket that make over 100K in a year, you have to cap it at 100K. But most of those spreadsheets the banks are going to supply to you have a calculation for that, and you'll kind of see that in the spreadsheet, along with state unemployment that the company paid. So Mississippi, the company pays 100%. Clients that I have in Alaska is some employee paid and some employer paid. So we have to, separate that out. So it depends on the state that you're in. But there's a report you can get from your payroll company that shows that as well. If you're a sole prop independent contractor or self-employed without payroll, what banks are currently asking for now is, again, proof you were in business as of 2/15. Some banks have taken your personal bank account if that's where you put your money, which I don't recommend as a bookkeeper. But some banks are only allowing if you have a business bank account as a bank statement or that nature. But you can work with your specific banker on what they're going to accept or not accept. Your 1040 Schedule C, if that's what you file, they're going to want your 2019. So if you haven't filed it yet, that's okay, but they're going to require you to have the 2019 Schedule C, and they're going to use line 31 on that form, plus health insurance and retirement. I have these kind of written out on what lines on the Schedule C that those numbers are, but it doesn't have to have been filed yet. So basically you can use your estimated or contact your tax preparer on getting just an estimated copy of what that is. If you're a partnership filer, you'll need a K-1 for all partners, and they're going to use guaranteed payments, health insurance, retirement, and box 14 on that, minus section 179 expense. So these are all like accounting terms. These are all on the form. So if just ask your tax preparer or pull up your 2019 tax return if you've already filed it, and you can find K-1, and all these boxes will be on there and clear on what numbers you need to pull. Caveat is if your business shows a loss and you do not pay health insurance or retirement, you really won't be able to apply for the PPP. If your company business shows a loss and you pay health insurance and retirement, you can get a PPP in the amount of the health insurance retirement times 12 divided by 2.5. So that's kind of where, it's a catch-22. We want to write our taxes and use all the deductions we can get. But in this case, that's not going to be, helpful for us to get a PPP loan because we won't qualify. And then I just have a little calculations will be divided by 12 times 2.5 to figure out your loan amount on those things. So just kind of tips for completing the loan package. I say use your bank first. You already have an established relationship, an established account there. If they're an SBA approved lender, which a lot of banks at this point are, because your paperwork will just be quicker. Some banks, if you don't have an established relationship, you're going to have to open an account and all that, stuff, which can be fine. I also just personally suggest using a small local bank. Those in this industry and in this specific PPP time have been kind of the heroes in my eyes, because the bigger banks, you just go online, you fill out the application, you don't really have, if you have it or you don't have it, you get denied or approved. And it's been kind of a difficult process that way. We need the big banks, but for the small guys, having the relationship and working with a small local bank has been an incredible process for most of my clients in this time. And every application that we sent in or helped our clients send in has been approved. And I think that was largely in part to the fact that they had a relationship with their local banker. There is a independent contractor calculator on the U.S. Chamber's website. I haven't had time to go on and figure that out, because that was in one of the webinars I had. So if you're kind of having trouble with what do I use or what numbers can I use, if you go there, that should be able to kind of help guide you as well. Oh, yes. You want to maximize your loan amount, so use the 12 months that are best for your business if the bank allows you to. So kind of the time frame they were looking at was January through December of 2019 payroll, or you could use second quarter of 2019 through first quarter of 2020. So if your payroll changed a lot in January, February, and March of this year, if you gave raises or you hired a lot more employees or you hired a lot less, I suggest you use that quarter 2 to quarter 1 of 2020 timeframe, because some people are going to get into this, they're borrowing too much or not borrowing enough because their quarter 1 payroll amount changed so drastically. So if your bank allows you to do that, which most have, I would do that. So you have to use 12 consecutive months of payroll, assuming you've been in business that long. There's some other calculations if you haven't, and there's some seasonal calculations as well, but your bankers can help you with that too. So don't borrow too much. That's where that 12 months comes in, and have your backup documentation. Everything that you send to your banker it's proof that you've paid payroll historically, and that's why you're asking for this loan amount number. So it's just kind of keeping all of that information handy. So PPP forgiveness. So once you've been funded and you get the money, we're still awaiting final regulations on this. So I'll be doing some other informational videos and things on this once those regulations come out. But the basics currently right now are that you have to use 75% of the loan amount you got of the funds to pay payroll within the 8-week time frame. So remember, the 8-week time frame starts when you get the money in your bank account. So 75% of that money has to be used on payroll if you want it forgiven. 25% can be used on other things, which I'll talk about here in a second. So your employee and compensation levels need to be maintained. I've heard a few different things in terms of if you had, so example is if you had 50 employees and you laid them off before you got your PPP loan and you're going to hire them back, you have to hire back like 90% of those people. So you can't just hire, 50% of those people and take the other money and spend it on something else that you needed to spend it on or that you owed. You have to hire back people. That's the whole point of this program, is they want to keep people employed and getting a paycheck. So if you reduce your employees and don't bring back everybody, part of that will not be forgiven. Part will, it'll just be reduced kind of in that calculation. You do not have to hire back the same person. So it's head count, not person, if that makes sense. If I let Sally go and Sally doesn't want to come back to work, I can hire someone else to replace her amount of payroll. It doesn't have to be the same exact person. So your loan forgiveness will be reduced if you decrease your full-time employee headcount. And your loan forgiveness will also be reduced if you decrease salaries and wages by more than 25%. So if you hire Sarah back, you have to pay her at least 75% of what you were paying her. So you can decrease it, but it can't be more than 25%. And then rehiring, you have until June 30th to restore your full-time employment and salary levels for any changes made between February 15th and April 26th. All this means is people are going to be applying for PPP, and everyone's going to have a different 8-week time frame, right? So your time frame starts when you get funded. So some people that got funded this week aren't going to wait until June 30th to hire people. You need to be hiring your people back now, even if you're not open. So that's been kind of a controversial thing, but for right now, that's what the regulations say. If you have more detailed questions on that, I can get into that, but I have a short amount of time today. So then so that's 75% of payroll. Your other 25% can be used on rent or mortgage interest for your business, utilities, which include telephone and internet that you pay for your business, and then sole props. The little caveat here is a lot of times you're working from home. If you have not deducted those kinds of expenses in the past on your tax return, you can't start now and get it forgiven. So you're going to have to show some backup documentation that you've paid yourself rent, you've paid utilities, on your P&L and things like that in the past, and taken that deduction on your tax return. So just kind of things to think through. All right. Things to remember, I kind of mentioned this earlier, you're borrowing 2.5 months, which is 10 weeks of money, but you're only being forgiven 8 weeks. So keep in mind that a lot of people possibly over borrowed. That's not necessarily the case, but working with your bookkeeper, CPA, or banker to kind of figure that out is going to be an important aspect of forgiveness. So good record keeping is going to be important. If part of your loan is not forgiven, so if you're not able to use it all or things like that, and you don't want to pay it back and you want to use the cash for other things, it's going to just end up rolling into a traditional kind of SBA loan at 1% interest and has to be paid within 2 years. So that's kind of the terms of the loan of whatever's not forgiven. This has kind of come out in our industry to remember that forgivable expenses will not be tax deductible. So if you get a $50,000 loan and you use all $50,000 on payroll and some operational expenses, that's not tax deductible because the money came from the government and it was more kind of like a grant, if that makes sense. So the income you got from them is not taxable, but the expenses are not taxable either. So, you need to implement proper tracking for this in your accounting software. My suggestions are you could use different expense lines altogether or a journal entry at the end of the year if you have accounting software. Ask your bookkeeper or CPA for some advice on how to track this a little differently. Think about future budgets. So for me, a lot of my clients, in 2021 are going to want to look back on 2020. How did they do in this time period? So are they going to want these forgivable expenses showing up on their P&L, or are they not? So you kind of have to think that through. So that'll be different in everyone's case. It's kind of how you manage your, how you look at your financial reports and stuff. And then I said forgivable income's not taxable either. So whatever you got and used is not taxable to you. So kind of some other options past the PPP loan. There was the EIDL loan. That application period is currently closed, but within the thing that they passed yesterday, there's another $60 billion set aside for this program. So I anticipate it to open again when the PPP loan app opens as well. So the EIDL loan is the one that's a traditional SBA economic disaster loan. And you apply on SBA.gov. They ended up making a very simple process, takes maybe 5 minutes to apply. It is not forgivable, but helps with cash flow. So if kind of the examples I've used, if you're a restaurant and closed and you reopen a month and a half later, you're going to have a lot of food you're going to have to buy up front that you may not have cash ready to buy, right? Or you got to pay for that. So these idle loans are kind of for that purpose for the next couple of months when you reopen and need the cash flow. They can be applied with, if you got the PPP loan, you can also apply for the idle loan, but they can't be used for the same things. So remember, the PPP has that 8-week window. The idle loan can be used for whatever you want. So that's kind of where I said payroll and those certain operational expenses you want to use with PPP funds. The idle loan you want to use for cost of goods sold, inventory, other things, or payroll after that 8-week period of time. You can't use them for the same stuff. And things to note, if you apply for the idle loan, if your application number started with a 2, I did get confirmation on this yesterday from SBA. If you applied in the very, very beginning and your application number started with a 2, it's kind of null and void. You need to go reapply. So you'll want to look at that for when this opens back up. If your application started with a number 3, then you're in their system. They're taking, I said 15 to 20 days, but yesterday I found out they're taking about 4 to 6 weeks to respond. And the next response you'll get after your application is an email from the SBA to set up your account and approve your loan amount. So that kind of comes into fraud. They're not going to call you. They're going to email you. It needs to be from sba.gov, kind of pay attention to that. I have seen that in our industry, some people have just had money show up in their bank account and they received the email later. So that $10,000 grant they had going with this idle loan, it's $1,000 per employee. Some people have just seen that they had 2 employees and they saw $2,000 come into their account. That's from this program. So you may want to, if you applied for that stuff, you may want to kind of look into that if you've had some money dumped into your account. Another program that they're getting ready to outlay is for a little bit larger companies, and they're hoping to have it active by May 1st. Is the Main Street Lending Program. It's for more established businesses with a minimum loan of $1 million. It's not forgivable, just like a normal SBA loan, and you have to have fewer than 10,000 employees. You also kind of have some credit rating things to be approved for this loan. So you have to have, this is for businesses that already have very established credit with their banks, lines of credit, things that they use, larger businesses. And there's some EBITDA tests involved with getting approval for this loan. But for larger companies, good to know that this is kind of getting ramped up and going to be available in May. The U.S. Chamber Small Business Grant, we did just check this morning. It's savesmallbusiness.com. Everybody, if you're in some kind of chamber or in this chamber, you probably got the email that this was a $5,000 grant they were giving to people until it ran out. This morning, it said that if you had created an account, you could still apply. If you haven't created an account, then you couldn't apply anymore. And then I haven't really heard that this is going to continue forward. So if you have questions on that, you can email me, or I'm sure email the chamber as well. Some other things to think about is like your insurance, business loss of use. Some people have, liability insurance, and some things, policies allow for business loss of use. So you could possibly file an insurance claim. There are a lot of exclusions on liability policies for communicable diseases though. So you'll need to get with your insurance agent and ask them, hey, does my policy have this? Could I be covered with this? Or am I not because of this? But things to think about that you may not have thought about yet as other options. Also state help. Certain states are having grants or loans or other things available in the U.S. So check with your local state websites. And I know Roger Wicker has like a COVID-19 webpage and stuff like that with some grants available. And then the Chamber's doing a great job at keeping us up to date on all the things that are available as well for us in Mississippi. All right, getting kind of to the end, some next steps to think about. Some challenges that we've been talking about in our industry and just overall that small business employers are going to face for people to come back to work is obviously that employees don't want to come back due to COVID illness or risk, and also the shelter in place order. But now they're kind of allowing curbside and non-essential businesses to be open here for us, stuff like that. But employees still don't want to come back due to maybe getting sick. Some other things that I've heard from my clients is, look, my employees don't want to come back because they're making more on unemployment than I can pay them. So I got the PPP loan and now people don't want to come back to work. What do I do? This was an interesting question to me, but I also talked to a payroll company that I have a relationship with here, and they made a good point. So if you got the PPP loan and your business is not open right now, the point is you're still supposed to pay people and rehire them. That's the gist. If you're offering them employment and they're not wanting to take it, there's actually a form, and if you do your own payroll or however that works, like I have a payroll company that does it, I report to them, hey, I let this person know that I wanted to hire them back and give them a paycheck and they refused. You actually report that to unemployment. That's part of your employer, responsibility to do. So our thinking in this is, if you're saying they don't want to come back to work but have offered it, and you report that because that's your responsibility as an employer, that turns off unemployment for them historically. So stuff's different with COVID and stuff is different in each state. But in Mississippi, if you report that, which you're supposed to, their unemployment is going to stop. So that's just kind of some things to think through, when you're offering people their jobs back, not to be ugly and, say, well, I'm reporting that you're not taking your job back or whatever. But some other things are just go hire somebody else to take their spot. You know what I mean? And then when unemployment runs out in July, they're not, they're going to have to go look for employment somewhere else because they didn't want to come to you. So just some things to think through. As an employer, you're not helpless on that is kind of what I'm trying to say. Then some other things are fear employees will take advantage of the Family Medical Leave Act. So I do payroll, but I do basic things and no basic rules. That's why I have a relationship with a payroll company. So if you have questions on if you're exempt or does this even apply to you and do you have to pay that or do you not, get with a payroll provider or your CPA will probably know too. So those are just kind of some challenges and things to think through. Some other important things are record keeping. So you're going to have to keep detailed records for forgiveness of your PPP funds. And then I'm anticipating this, but I don't know that this is going to happen, but this is possible tax credits for loss of revenue. So nothing's come out about this yet, but some of my larger clients are in travel industry. And I'm tracking people that canceled contracts or were not available. I just have a Google sheet I'm tracking for them so that we have a number that shows us here's the loss of revenue because of this, right? Because they wouldn't have canceled their contract if this didn't happen. And I don't want to have to go back and figure that out later if indeed they do get a tax credit or something along those lines. And then getting books and taxes caught up. So look, the people that had bookkeeping and had all their finances straight were applying for the PPP loans in 2 days because it was quick to pull all their information and get that. So it's important to get the books and your taxes kind of squared away and caught up if you're behind. Other things that people have talked about is what if this is a seasonal thing, and more help comes or grants come that you need your financials available to submit. So just kind of being prepared and up to date. Budgeting and forecasting. Now is a good time to work out a budget and forecast what's the next 6 months of your business going to look like. What's the next year of your business going to look like based on how your business has been affected by this. So doing that on your own, whether it's getting a bookkeeper or talking to your CPA or your financial advisor. If you haven't been into budgeting because you just don't want to know, because that happens a lot, now's the time to to get into it and really understand it and be doing that. Bookkeeper, CPA, and personal banker relationships. I am a bookkeeper, but my clients, we were all caught up with things and ready to apply. I had questions for their CPA because we work as a team. I had relationships with personal bankers, and so did they, which helped us make this process pretty seamless for them, right? We helped apply and fill out the stuff and do all of those things, but those are kind of key relationships that you need to have as a small business owner, no matter how small or how large you are. Bookkeepers and CPAs don't have to do everything for you, but they're good to review things or give you advice, just like we need attorneys for legal advice. And personal bankers were like really a key in getting these loans approved quickly, especially here on the coast. The local banks here were amazing. So if you don't have those relationships yet, seek those out, in the next 6 months to a year. It's important to have those in times like this. So the years of relationship building with their team helped them apply quickly and get funding quickly for everybody. So that's kind of all I have. It was a lot of information, but I tried to get it all down to the most important things to think about and at least kind of get your mind going.
Awesome. Thank you, Hope. I mean, that is extremely helpful information. While we're waiting on some questions to come in, I want to thank our CEO, Adele Lyons, for joining us today. And I'm going to allow her to talk at this point. I think she wanted to thank you, Hope, for all that you're doing.
Hey, Hope, it's Adele. Yeah, thank you for great information that's very helpful for folks. I think, people were feeling a little bit desperate when the funds ran out. And so it's great to hear the news from yesterday about the Senate looking for the House to do their part today and the president to sign that and get it rolling. My question to you real quick is, how many, I know you said you've done a bunch of these. Can you just give us an indication? I mean, I'm just curious, how many packages have you worked on, and do you have some dollar amounts? I think people would probably be blown away to hear that.
Sure. I think I counted the other day, and we did about 27 or 28 just for our clients. We worked and advised a few other people on some of theirs, and they did them themselves. And the dollar amounts ranged from, $4,000 because they had one employee on salary to almost $350,000 for a restaurant and hotel and things like that. So, it ranged, but it's all based on their current payroll and time.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for being helpful to our members, and thank you for your continued commitment to the Mississippi Gulf Coast Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Adele. Hope, we do have a couple of questions. The first question is, if you receive the $10,000 emergency EIDL funds and you receive a PPP loan, how does the emergency monies affect the PPP loan monies? Are both forgiven?
Good question. So the best that we can come up with right now, because the forgiveness in the transition is not clear, is the $10,000 was originally planned to happen in a 3-day window of time to help facilitate until you got your PPP funds. So the last thing we heard was basically if you got $40,000 in PPP and you got the $10,000, don't anticipate that $50,000 is forgivable. Anticipate that $40,000 is forgivable. Hopefully that helps. It's not in addition to the PPP. It's going to end up rolling into the PPP. So if you use all the 40 and that's forgiven, you're probably going to owe the 10,000 if that makes sense. It's not super clear on how that process is going to wash out, but it was clear that they're not in addition to each other. They're going to end up combining.
And y'all, once again, there's a question and answer button where you can ask your questions. And we also have a chat box. So if you wanted to have things be open on either one of those, we can answer those for you. Hope, we have one more question. It says, when you say small local banks, we have some larger regional banks like Hancock Whitney who seem pretty local at the branch level. Do you think they are okay to work with? Are you saying avoid large national banks like Chase Manhattan or Bank of America?
So this is personal preference, and probably not going to make certain people happy, but Bank of America and Chase were, I have in our industry, so I'm on an industry page with a lot of other bookkeepers, CPAs, and tax preparers. We've got nobody that applied through Bank of America or Chase that's been funded yet. I haven't seen one, and that's just on my page. That's not to say that hasn't happened, but I was not impressed with the process. I was not impressed with not being able to ask some people questions along the way and things like that. And sure, the regional banks like Hancock, I consider them a local bank because Hancock's really involved in our community, and so you can, you can have that relationship with the lender. Not to say that Wells Fargo's not, but that's my personal preference. We had more problems with bigger banks and ended up pulling apps and moving them to the local banks.
Awesome. Okay. That looks like all the questions that have come in, and it looks like we don't have any chat questions either. So on that note, I want to thank everybody for coming and out, and I really want to thank Hope and To the Rescue Bookkeeping. They're a huge, huge supporter of our chamber, and we are so thankful for them and all the work that Hope's putting into this. And so thank you so much for your advocacy, and thank you so much for taking the time today to come speak with us and our members. If you have any questions about the chamber, or if you have any questions about your benefits, or if you would like to join the chamber, you can reach out to us. Our contact information is on our website, mscoastchamber.com. We are all working remotely and all happy to answer any questions you have. And on that note, I hope your families are happy and healthy, and Hope, if you wanted to say a few words.
Oh, thanks everybody for joining. And as always, just if you have questions or concerns, please email or call my office. We're happy to help in any way we can. And we love the chamber.
Hope, we actually did have one more question come in. Okay. It says, what happens if my business doesn't bounce back as planned and I cannot repay my loan later on?
I assume that that's similar to, just defaulting on any type of loan. There has been rumble of, what they're going to do if that does happen, in terms of if people get the PPP and then close in 6 months because they couldn't manage. So that's, the jury's still out on what they would do with that. It's not a clear picture yet.
Great question though.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, on that note, we're going to cut it off. Thank you so much, everybody. This webinar was recorded and will be posted either later on today or tomorrow. So it's some great information. If you knew some businesses who missed out on this, please be sure to let them know that this will be posted on our Facebook page with a link to our YouTube page as well. Thank you, Hope, and To the Rescue Bookkeeping again. And on that note, I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks.